Okay, Pradeep. We're good.
Good morning and good evening, everyone. My name is Pradeep Nayak, and I am the project director of Vulnerability to Viability Global Partnership. And it is my honor to welcome all of you to the inaugural edition of the B2B thematic webinar series. B2B is a global partnership of transdisciplinary research and knowledge, and it is a network of about 100 members from Asia, Africa, Canada, and internationally. The goal of the partnership is to support small-scale fisheries in their transition from vulnerability to viability. The B2B Global Partnership aims to identify the diverse factors and conditions contributing to the vulnerability of small-scale fisheries around the world and engage collaboratively with small-scale fishing communities and other key NGO, government, and university partners to enhance SSF viability. In doing so, the B2B partnership brings people and organizations together across physical, cultural, and disciplinary boundaries through a shared interest in addressing global change impacts on small-scale fisheries around the globe. We are conducting transdisciplinary, community-engaged research in 6 countries of Asia and 6 countries in Africa, as well as globally. The B2B thematic webinar series, which is why we are here today, is a series to initiate the B2B global partnership to facilitate and generate high-level discussions on vulnerability and viability themes and topics within the context of small-scale fisheries. The goal of this series is to feature academics, public practitioners, and members of the civil society who have made significant contributions to the theoretical, practical, and policy aspects of small-scale fisheries, both locally and globally. The B2B thematic webinar series will take place on the last Friday of every month throughout the 2021. You can find more details at our website, which is www.b2bglobalpartnership.org, and you can also find a link to join every month on the last Friday. Today we are here at the inaugural talk of the webinar, and it is my privilege to introduce Dr. Rashid Sumaila as our inaugural speaker. Dr. Rashid Sumaila is a University Kilam professor and Canada Research Chair Tier 1 in Interdisciplinary Ocean and Fisheries Economics at the Institute of Oceans and Fisheries and the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs, University of British Columbia in Canada. Rashid is also the project director of Ocean Canada Partnership under a SARC partnership grant support. Professor Sumaila's research focus is on bioeconomics, marine ecosystem valuation, and the analysis of global issues such as fisheries subsidies, marine protected areas, illegal fishing, climate change, marine plastic pollution, and oil spills, and assessing all of their impact on the fishery-based livelihoods vulnerabilities and exploring opportunities for viability. Dr. Sumaila has experience working in fisheries and natural resource projects in many places of the world, but with specific reference to Norway, Canada, North Atlantic, Southern African region, and Western African region, Hong Kong, and South China Sea. Dr. Sumaila received his PhD in economics from University of Oregon and his BSc quantitative surveying from Ahmadu Bello University. Sumaila is widely published and cited, and I'm not kidding about it. He won the 2017 Volvo Environment Prize and was named a Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada in 2009. His interest in the environment started early in life when his grandfather used to say, people should work as if the ground feels the pain. This is indeed sophisticated environmentalism. His specific interest in ocean and fisheries was picked in Norway. Sumaila enjoys exploring novel ideas and mentoring future thinkers. He loves waking up every day thinking of how best to contribute to ensuring that we bequeath a healthy ocean to our children and grandchildren so they too can have the option to do the same. And I truly believe that the talk today is part of that grand vision of Dr. Sumaila. And absolutely, there is no kidding about it again. It is my supreme honor to invite Dr. Sumaila to deliver the inaugural talk for the V2B thematic webinar series, and his talk is entitled Trade in Seafood and its Impacts on Livelihoods and Food Security in Developing Countries. Over to Dr. Sumaila. Dr. Sumaila, the floor is yours.
Oh my God, thank you so much. Can you hear me well? Yeah. So thank you very much, Pratip. I call you Pratip, but Professor Nayak, just for this occasion, and for reading all that bio. When somebody does that, I feel so, my gosh, this is too much. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for inviting me to start off this year's V2V webinar series. It's such an honor. Thank you. And the topic here is trade in seafood and its impacts on livelihoods and the food security of people living in the developing world, which is quite central to the goals and aims of V2V, as Pratip has just summarized for you. So the key thing is that we have fishery resources around the world. People depend on them, especially people in the developing world, in Africa, Asia, Latin America, but also in the developed world. If you're in Canada here, I mean, indigenous people of Canada, fish is so central to the culture, to the food, and so on and so forth. So it's crucial. It is renewable, which means that if we are wise in the way we relate and use the fishery resources available to the world, we can continue to benefit from this forever. You know, our grandchildren and their own grandchildren can continue to have good protein all over the world. And but if we don't manage it sustainably, we don't use it equitably, so more people benefit from it, we lose this renewability and turn it into a non-renewable thing that you mine, which will be very unfortunate. So all my work is related, and those of my colleagues in the V2V, in Ocean Canada Partnership, in the Too Big to Ignore, which is also run by Ratana Champandi, and others. So we all are working hard to try to ensure that this amazing resource that nature gives us, we don't plunder it and mess up so many communities. So, and in your introduction, you said I call myself an interdisciplinary fisheries economist. And I take this very seriously because I don't believe that any one discipline alone can help us sustain our fishery resources, sustain our communities. We need to work together collaboratively, academically, but not only that, with non-academics and co-create knowledge. So all of this underlines my perspective on fisheries research. Now, so some of you would have seen me display this model. I like it so much because really it can get us grounded and get us really connected to what nature in general, but in this case, we are talking about the marine biodiversity, marine ecosystem, marine life, how connected we are, intertwined we are with our natural systems. Sometimes when you live in a high-rise building in a big city in the world, you tend to forget the connection to nature. And this thing here tells you a lot. Whether you're talking about trade or economics or equity, social aspect, cultural aspect, the key point is that we go to the ocean, we go to nature generally to take resources, whether it's fish, many other things, we bring them into our economy and we do what we do with them. We process, we sell, we buy, we eat, we consume, we do our cultural stuff, social stuff. As we do that, think about it. What do? We generate waste. We generate, whether you are pumping out CO2, whether you are throwing away plastic or oil spills. And where do they go to? They go back to the ocean, they go back to nature. So from nature, the good things we like come, and to nature, the bad things we don't like go. And clearly, if you don't do these two things wisely, you are going to destroy the basis of what we need to survive on Earth. So that is the general framing. So essentially, you need marine biodiversity before you can trade fish, before you can make any money out of it, before you can get jobs. And you have to do it so that it benefits as many people as possible. And I think this is one of the main themes of the V2V partnership. That's why small scale fishes are so central to the partnership, because we have more small scale fishes by far than large scale fishes. Our fishing communities depend on fish. They use smaller boats compared to the big industrial, and we need to zoom on them and try to make them as viable and smart as possible so they can actually support as many people as possible. So that is my first main point. Now, zooming in on trade, one can classify the trade in fish in various ways. I choose to do this for this talk. I have three buckets of types of trade, and the first one I call legitimate trade. So this is trade that is formal, it's official, it's imports and exports. You do it through official channels, and that is legitimate. That is legal trade, if you like. And this is through the market, buying and selling, imports and exports. Then you have another legitimate trade that takes place, which is actually buying access to fishing itself in other countries' waters. All right. So I call that legitimate trade in fish on the underwater, trade on the water that allows you to take your boats, say European boats go into West Africa and fishing there because they have fishing access. That is also legitimate. And you see that. I'll talk about a bit more about that. Then you have the last bucket, which is actually illicit trade in the catch of fish. And this stems from IUU fishing, illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing. Essentially, if we just focus on even just the illegal part. So here you catch fish where you are not supposed to catch, or use vessels you are not supposed to, whatever. If you fish in ways that the rules about fishing in that area are broken, then you are fishing illegally, essentially. So these are the three buckets, and now I would quickly talk about each of them, and we'll see how. So let's take legitimate trade and fish through the markets, exports and imports. Yeah, fish, as we know, and it's been reported by many researchers and papers, fish is one of the most highly traded commodities, agricultural commodities, and estimates of around 40% of fish caught in one place, 40% of it ends up being exported or imported as you wish. So, and that's a big amount. To get the contract just compared to rice, and for rice the estimate is about only 5% of it is enters into export and import. So fish is big in that regard. All right. And what are the implications of this? Okay, countries love this. I mean, they say, okay, we earn foreign currency, especially developing countries. This is important, obviously, because you need to buy the things you don't make. You need to import hospital staff and so on, health and other things. So clearly, if done properly, legitimate trade can really support the economy of a country, okay, if done properly. Now, how about equity? How does it work? And this is my own beef with trade. I mean, trade is great if it is done under the right parameters and making sure that those who make the gain are also those who pay for the cost and benefit. The cost of benefit should be aligned. So what usually happens is middle the middleman or the middle persons, to be general, I mean, because it's not only men, but mostly men, grab the benefits. So you do the trade, the foreign exchange comes, who gets that money? Where does it go? And when there is mismatch, as there is usually, then small scale fishers pay the price because They lose their fish and they don't see the money coming in because fish is traded. So that's a double whammy, and we don't want that, especially thinking of small scale fisheries. Misuse of the funds, yeah. Usually the money will just go into some central budget, and who knows what happens to that, right? And this can lead to income losses and livelihood losses for coastal communities, not only in the developing world, but mostly so, but also in the developed world, the communities can suffer from this. Now, the third element here is the food security element. Usually we catch fish and it's really amazing. It's great for most people in the world. We like to eat fish, right? And I say fish is the one animal protein. I mean, the others too, but I see this more in fish. Fish is something that is good for rich people and also good for poor people, important for both sides. My example is if you have a good day and you are living in Delhi, in the rich parts of Delhi or Lagos or Sao Paulo or Vancouver, what do you do? When you have a good day, you have something to celebrate, you go to a restaurant, you order sometimes fish dishes. And so it's good in that sense. But if you are in parts of Southeast Asia or in West Africa or East Africa or some parts of Latin America, fish may be the only animal protein you may end up having in your dish, right? So this is really central, all the micronutrients and so on and so forth. Now, what does import and export do to this? In general, there's competition, right? You get the fish, you either consume it locally or you sell it off and make money, right? And this can lead to really bad stuff happening where locals don't get the fish they need to meet their nutritional needs, right? So you have food insecurity and nutritional insecurity. And so we need to think about that when we engage in trade. Countries need to think about that, especially developing countries. All right, so now we go to the legitimate fish trade that on the water. This is access agreements, where a country, usually rich countries, you can think of Japan, you can think of China, you can think of European countries, America, buying access into the waters of countries in the developing world, the Pacific. For example, Europe is very well documented how Europe buys fishing access agreements in West Africa. In the US and Japan do quite a bit of that in the Pacific island countries. China is all over the place. You can find them in Latin America, in Asia, and other Asian countries, and in Africa, doing this kind of deals to get access to fish. Okay, what does it mean in terms of economics? This gives usually the big countries actually get access to fish very cheaply. When this agreement started in West Africa, it was almost like the EU as a bloc will buy access and they pay X dollars to go in and fish. And usually there's not much detail on what fish do you catch, where do you catch it. Even the quantity is not really clearly stated, and the countries don't even know how to measure that. And so when this agreement started, and fortunately academics zoom into this and criticize, and things have improved since the beginning. But in the beginning, it's almost like you go to a Walmart or big supermarket and you pay $10 and they say, go in and pick whatever you want to pick, right? So if there is a diamond section, you pay your $10 and go and carry a big chunk of diamond, right? That is essentially what was happening. So you get access, you catch all the tunas or whatever is valuable. And so cheap access, the EU used to pay to allow European companies to go. So that is a subsidy, which disadvantages small scale fishers in the region. And you can see this. And then the funds collected as access rights, where does it go? Mostly not to the coastal communities where the fish are taken. So that's an issue. So the equity issue comes in there, and due competition for local fishers comes into play. Sometimes even safety issues, big boats just crashing or chasing out little boats and so on. And this has livelihood consequences as well as food security consequences. So that is when you sell access to your fishing grounds to rich countries. Now let's go into the illegal stuff on IUU. So essentially, most people on this webinar, I suspect, know what IUU is, but it never hurts to say it again. The first I is illegal fishing, and that is very clear. You're fishing where you are not supposed to fish by law of a country, for example, or a community. This can be at the community level, where the community have the control of the resource. Then they have their rules. If you break those rules, then you are fishing illegally. Then there is the U, which is unreported. So you catch fish and you don't report it to any official unit so that we know how much fish actually comes out of the system, which is important to ensuring good management. So that's the first U. The second U is unregulated fishing, where there are no really well-established rules, and so it's almost free for all. Parts of the high seas is like that. And so when you hear IUU, that is what this is about. All right, years back, we actually did a little study which got a lot of attention actually. This was simply what we did was to collect data for a period. You see it in that paper, it appeared in Marine Policy, where we just looked at newspapers, every source that we can get that reports illegal fishing, apprehension of illegal fishing boats. So we read in the newspaper that said, a boat X was caught in country Y fishing illegally for tuna or sea bass. So we collected all those data. That's what we displayed on this global map. The larger the bubble, the bigger the number of cases we find in the areas. And when you look at this, I believe this has not decreased actually, maybe even increased in some parts of the world. When you look here, this thing happens almost everywhere, the illegal fishing. And this one is just the illegal, because you have to be apprehended because you are fishing where you are not supposed to fish, or with the gear you are not supposed to fish. So there's no, the UUs are not here. And you can see bubbles all over, except in New Zealand. One time I gave a talk and I said, it's happening all over the world. And there was a lady from New Zealand in the audience. She said, nope, not in New Zealand. I had to concede because, yeah, my data doesn't show that. But I wouldn't let her get away. So I quickly came by and said, you are right. But maybe it's because you guys are good at hiding the data, right? So this is only the data we are able to find, which means that this is an underestimate, And you see here, I want to highlight the Horn of Africa. You see what is happening. A lot of illegal fishing, mostly by foreign fleets, a lot of dumping around Somalia. And actually, there's a book that I read that actually talks about how the piracy, you remember Somalia was big on piracy. Actually, this was, they made a connection to this illegal dumping and illegal fishing, where locals came together to kind of drive out the illegal fishing boats, form vigilantes that then turn out to be taken out by the pirates and so on. So you see, illegal fishing actually can lead to bigger national and global problems. So we need to take care of that. Now, this is just to tell you that this is happening. It's a big problem, lots of papers on that. But what does it mean? That means what happens to these fish that are caught illegally? So that is the next transition, moving from IUU fishing to illicit trade in seafood, which is the third bucket I was talking about. And if IUU fishing is widespread, as I've tried to convince you in the earlier slide, then it is likely that illicit trade in marine fish catch is also common worldwide. But what is illicit trade? So I now define what it is. And I took this from a definition which was provided by the Global Agenda Council of the World Economic Forum. They were talking in general about illicit trade, not in fish, but all illicit trade. And they define this as illicit trade involves money, goods, or value gained from illegal and generally unethical activity. Okay. It consists of a wide variety of illegal trading activities, ranging from human trafficking, environmental crime like illegal fishing, illicit trade in natural resources, and so on. So a broad definition, you know. So if you are gaining from illegal activity or an ethical activity, then that is considered as illicit trade, you know. So for example, illicit trade in the arts, this used to be in the news a lot, involves people stealing, selling, forging, and trading art work illegally, all right? You could almost turn this and put fish in there, which is exactly what I did in the paper I published in 2018. And I like this paper because I actually put it in a relatively new journal, the Ghanaian Journal of Economics. So I put it in there partly because this information, first when I did this model that I'm going to show you, I applied it to West Africa. So that is a nice place to put it in a West African journal. But also it's another way to promote our small journals in the developing world that are trying to find their space in this highly competitive area of journal publishing. So I kind of like this contribution a lot because of that. And that actually led to a paper. First, I focused on West Africa, and then we blew this up into a global paper. And that paper got into Science Advances. And the rest of the talk, I will give you some of the highlights of the paper. So essentially, we discovered that a lot of the IUU fishing ends up entering illicit trade. They take it and they sell the fish outside of the official channel. And that has heavy economic consequences, social consequences, especially for the developing world where most of this activity actually takes place. I think Asia and Africa together, the total IUU fishing is far, I don't remember exactly, it's in the paper, but definitely more than about 70% of the global IUU fishing takes place in waters in the developing world. So most of these losses I'm going to show you are actually losses to developing countries and their fishing communities in terms of dollars, in terms of jobs, in terms of food security. So this is just to show you our method was quite straightforward. Once you're able to estimate the illegal fishing that place, the quantity, then you run it through this our model, which just shows you, we take the catch, we turn it into revenue, and calculate profits, and then we do the added value and get the economic impact, the income impact on people in the communities, and also tax revenues for these governments of these countries. Think of Guinea-Bissau, a lot of the fish taken illegally, which means they don't get any processing at home, they don't get the food, they don't get the income, and their governments don't get any tax revenue. So this is really hugely unfair to these small countries, right? So that is a basic structure of our model. And just to concretize things, so I've taken West Africa here to show you, and this is a very broad definition of West Africa, starting all the way from Morocco down to the end of Namibia. South Africa is a bit complicated because you have this the Indian Ocean side part of it. So this data I'm going to show you is about these countries in relation to illegal fish catch. All right. So here we are, a graph for you very quickly that summarizes. It summarizes the take of fish from the waters of West Africa from 1950 to after 2010, you know. And this quickly tells you the catches by legal foreign fleets. So these fleets are there through agreements by Europe or European companies and West African countries. And if you look at that, you see that in the beginning, Russia was big. I think maybe when it was Soviet Union, and then you have Europe was big. China was nowhere to be found in the beginning, right? And as you go, you have Europe there became taking almost everything around the 1970s and 80s. And then China has started emerging here, and you have others. So that's the story of legal foreign fishing in the waters of West Africa. And as I summarize up here, Europe, China, and Russia are the main contributors to the total legal catches. European catches are declining, while those of China and Russia are increasing, as this graph shows. Next, you have catches by illegal fishing fleets. So this is where the trade is illicit, it's illegal fishing fleets. Again, if you look at here, there's very little. China, Europe was big, and now China is huge. And so you see the evolution through time, okay? Yeah, of the illegal parts. Again, just to make things concrete, I'm not talking in space. I should have, if I was more artistic, I'll have pictures of this species of fish for you to see, but hopefully you all know what a shrimp looks like, a tuna looks like, snapper, mackerel, sea bream, and yellow croaker. These are some of the main species that are caught illegally in West African waters and therefore, and also enter illicit trade, just to give you an idea, and there are citations in here. So there are two main channels through which catches enter illicit trade in West Africa. The use of reefers and transshipment is big, and these are the details here for you. So it involves offloading catches from fishing boats onto large freezer and processing ships at sea. And reefer activities account for about 16% of the fish exported from West African waters, and about 35 fishing reefers were seen in West African waters in 2013 alone. So most of these were operating under flags of convenience. So it's actually even difficult to track who is actually behind the boats doing this. Another channel is through how fish is transported for export. It is estimated that about 84% of fish exported out of West Africa are transported in large refrigerated containers, okay? And according to these authors, the concern with this mode of transportation is that containers are generally subjected to less stringent reporting requirements. So a lot of these illegal fish can pass through, right? And that's the second big channel. Now, back to the global study, these are the numbers we estimated. About 8 to 40 million tons of unreported catches, illegal catches. And this unreported is more complicated. We do not, if a small scale fisher, like subsistence fishing, is not considered illegal, even if it is not reported, because really some of these communities, there's no official to take the record. So this is not counted here. And if you are an artisanal fishing fleet and you sell your fish in local markets or you use it at home households, that is also not considered illegal in this our paper. So those are things communities do, and given their circumstances, it's not illegal at all. It is mainly the big, large industrial commercial fishing fleets. If they don't report, then there is a problem because they are formal businesses, and so yeah. And when you do that, you get 8 to 40 million tons going into illicit trade, resulting in about 17 billion at the top of our estimate of the catches associated to illicit trade, which leads to losses in economic impact, all the processing, the added value. The people in restaurants serving fish that cannot do that because the fish is shipped off in reefers, through reefers into other countries. We estimate at the top about 50 billion is being lost, right? Most of this in Asia and Africa, by the way, I told you that. I believe up to 70 or more percent of these are losses to developing countries. And the losses lead to tax losses. So the governments are starved again, which is a vicious cycle. Then they don't have the means to monitor and control their waters, and therefore there's more illegal fishing. My God, gotta get out of that vicious cycle. Now, what to do? And in our papers, we always try to give recommendations. One is to raise awareness among the public and policymakers, businesses, and the judiciary. This is really important because at the end of the day, if you catch somebody fishing illegally, you take them to court. If the courts don't take this serious, then all your effort is wasted. And this is real, I'm not joking. When Mandela got South Africa to be free and to have majority rule, one of the things we saw happening, the Department of Fisheries will catch somebody fishing illegally. They will take him, usually it's him, to the court, and the judges will say, what has the man done? He just went fishing, go home, right? So they didn't take that as really a problem until the government constituted an environmental court to sensitize the system for 3 years. So then slowly the judges began to take this serious. So there are all those things we need to make people aware of this. Improve national, regional, and continental fisheries policies and legislation, also global actually. Harmonize and enforce laws and codes of practice regarding illegal and illicit dealings in fisheries. And there are lots of instruments already in play. So I'll just have the list here. Those who want this presentation can get it later. And so we have efforts at the WTO, for example, trying to move subsidies from those that lead to overfishing and also those that are socially very bad. I mean, our estimates is that 80% of the subsidies the world gives out, 35 billion a year, goes to large-scale industrial fishing fleets. Can you imagine? Forget even about the environmental consequences, the overfishing. Just think about the social effect of this. So most of the communities use small boats. They don't get the money. They are made unviable because of that, competition-wise. Most women fishing are in the small sector. So you are disadvantaging women around the world, which is the last thing you want to do, given all the disadvantages our sisters and mothers and aunties face in almost every country. You don't want to make that work. How about the youth? The youth cannot start off with the big industrial boat. They have to start with small boats, and then you give all the money to the big, well-established. So the social consequences are terrible. And the WTO is negotiating now. If any one of you has any channel to get to the negotiators, so we are not saying take the money out of the communities, please. In fact, take more money there, but let the tax money work for people and nature rather than undermine nature, which means undermining people. Simple message, so difficult to get through politically. And then you have the UN also working on this. You have regional trade agreements and arrangements and so on and so forth. And I think I'm at the end of my slides. So I want to thank you all for your attention, and especially to my friend Pratib and the team, V2V Partnership, for inviting me, which actually I'm a member of V2V2. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to start off the seminar series for this year.
Thank you very much, Professor Sumaila. That was a wonderful talk, and lots of details about how to understand various sources of vulnerability and viability and what is happening around the world, but at the same time, some future directions. So in the next several minutes, what we are proposing to do is we have a lot of audience watching live streaming through YouTube. So Simmer is going to copy and paste all of those questions into the Zoom chat and the questions, and you can answer one by one. I can read them out to you, or you can have access to that questions also. So over to Simmer. Simmer, any questions from the YouTube live stream?
There are no questions as of now. I'm still waiting to hear from the viewers. Okay. But if there are any other questions from the people who have joined this Zoom meeting, you can feel free to add your questions to the chat box.
Yeah.
I wish we were in a room, and then I'll have a question for them, Yeah.
Yes. But in the meantime, if I may just ask you, so when you were talking about IUU, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, I was thinking about some of the communities that many of us have a chance to work. And a response to all of these three elements are inherent in many of these systems. Customarily, people have developed, mechanisms to address and respond to all, IUU, illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing. Is there any, do you see any glimpses of that in how the IUU is framed in the European context?
So let me see. You're saying you mentioned I thought you mentioned indigenous people or communities, right? So can you help me more with the question?
Yeah, I was just thinking, all these three elements, which is a big challenge now in fisheries in many parts of the world.
Yeah.
We have case studies and we have examples of how communities around the world have dealt with all these three things, and not today or yesterday, but over a historical period of time, through institutional means, through other mechanisms. So was there any consideration how IUU is being debated and discussed at this point in time? Any reflection of that?
Okay. Oh, yes. I think there's part of the literature that is looking at how we can learn from communities, from indigenous people, from norms and traditions, because this is not all just about official and the courts and penalties and so on. It's also about community engagement. And one study we did, we looked at different types of approaches that could work in different instances. For example, we look at Namibia. When Namibia got independence, I think from South Africa, the last stage, there was quite a bit of illegal fishing taking place. The new government took this very serious, and they used formal approaches. They bought aircraft and boats, and they were monitoring. And actually, the very first time they started, they caught three Spanish fishing boats fishing illegally. They arrested them, brought them to put them in jail, seized the boat, and that actually worked. After that, there was very little illegal fishing, at least foreign one, taking place in Namibian waters. Now we went to Australia and Indonesia. There is a part of it where Indonesian fishers actually go into now Australian waters and fish illegally. See, I'm doing that. And this has been contentious. In that place, they tried to use all sorts of the formal model, and it didn't work. It didn't work because, number one, the people were under extreme pressure in terms of livelihoods and poverty. So what do you do to stop this, right? I mean, even if you arrest them and put them in jail, fine. I mean, so the threshold was just too much, and the economics wouldn't work. The formal economic model wasn't working. And that is one, the poverty angle. But also, these fishers are saying traditionally, this is our fishing grounds. I mean, who is Australia? We were fishing here before Australia, right? This is traditional people in the borders there, right? And so you have that also. And this kind of argument has also been used in South Africa. And in those instances, you have to get the community, you have to rely on mechanisms that have been there for centuries in some cases. So yeah, big room for that.
So we have several questions from the audience now. So the first one is from Joyce Seki. She asks, please, I want to ask if you have some knowledge on impact of oil and gas on Ghanaian fisheries.
Yeah, okay. Specifically on Ghanaian fisheries, I don't have at the moment, but we have done oil spill studies. So the big one we did was the Gulf of Mexico when that big blowout happened. So we did a study. In fact, the study was so well received that I was asked to actually prepare scientific reports for courts, to be taken to court actually to get the company to compensate communities. So not in Ghana, but I have one closer to Ghana, which is actually Nigeria. What is the name of the group? The Kensarawiwes people, the Igoni people, right? Some of you know this story. Kensarawiwa was famous fighting because of oil spills destroying farms and so on in Nigeria, and the people not benefiting from the oil. So Eddie Allison, I don't know whether he's on the list here. he and I were asked to actually prepare socioeconomic analysis for a court case in England. The people of that area were very smart. They took Shell, I believe. They took them to court in England, not in Lagos, right, in London. So they had a law firm that took this issue pro bono. So we did a study to support the argument. And actually, I cite this as one of the most rewarding study I've done personally, because this is Nigeria. And the lawyers, using many arguments, including what we produce for them, actually won compensation for this village in the millions. And the money was taken there, as I was told, during the week or a week before Christmas. So you can imagine what happened to the community there. So that is the closest I've been in terms of oil spills and West Africa. We should do one on Ghanaian fisheries, right?
Yeah. So the next question is from Emily. In your research, have you ever come across fisher opinion on dolphins and whale bycatch? I think the question is mostly on bycatch, and if it is, and its impact on your research on IUU fishing.
Yes, so bycatch is a big issue, and there's been effort to actually deal with it in various places. Yesterday I finished reviewing a paper that actually looked at bycatch and using economic instruments to actually try to deal with this. Yeah. So it's a topical issue, and bycatch of iconic species like you have mentioned, dolphins and whales and turtles and so on, is very big. You're targeting your shrimp and you are just catching all these animals and just throwing them back. And so management needs to take this into account. Again, there's a good example in terms of using economic instruments in Africa. Actually, Namibia has a way they actually charge you for catching bycatch and discards and taking discards. And the fee is actually so high that when they introduces the level of bycatch drops significantly. Because if you have bycatch, you are charged more than the price of a quota for the fish you are looking for. And that's an economic approach to dealing with it. And I'm happy you are asking about this iconic species, because if Africa, Asia is doing well on this. I mean, in Hong Kong, we look at dolphin watching, which is a very, very viable, renewable way to earn money out of nature without directly killing it. So Africa could do more of that in Latin America and so on. So we can preserve nature whilst people get their livelihoods from them in a sustainable way.
Okay. The next question is from Navya Nair, and Navya is asking, as you have mentioned about various types of pollutions, how do you see the interconnection between water quality degradation and its impact on small-scale fishing communities, especially food security?
Yeah, so if you pollute the land, if the land, we know, agriculture, if you pollute the water, you're really, really affecting life in the ocean. And life in the ocean means life for people, because we depend so much. You can end up with a dead ocean, God forbid, because if we continue polluting all the oil spills, climate change, my God, ocean acidification and deoxygenation, all the things the stresses we're putting on the ocean, actually ultimately comes to hit people in the coast, small-scale fishers also. So that is why that model I started with, I like it so much. If you keep polluting, it's going to kill the life in the ocean and therefore affect the whole fishery and the economic activities that depend on them. So don't do that, please. So we should find a way to moderate the waste we create, and also to treat it in such a way that it doesn't pollute the land and the water.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And the next one is from Rosina. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation, Professor. Please, my question is, can IUU lead to climate change? Or basically the connection of IUU with climate change. If yes, what policies, strategies can SSF communities, governments, and other agencies put in place to respond to this?
Yeah. All right. The connection between IUU and climate change. There is obviously a connection. Some may be not very strong. If you think of fisheries in total, the estimate I've seen is that the fishing itself contributes about 1% of global CO2 emissions. All right. So 1%. You would think that 1% is small, but actually, if you look at fishing sector in terms of economics, GDP, I know the value is far more than that, all the social value, cultural value. But if you look at just GDP contribution for most countries is way, way, way below 1%. Okay. And yet the contribution to CO2 is 1%, according to this estimate, maybe more. Usually these estimates are underestimates. Now, I think from the literature, estimates of about 1/3 of total fish catch is IUU fishing. So you can almost, if we have a linear relationship, which is not likely because the illegal fishers are likely to waste more carbon, use more fuel because they are hide and seek and finding how to beat the system in order to do illegal activity versus the formal ones. But if we say 1-to-1, then that means about 1/3 of this 1% is due to illegal fishing. So that's one channel to which that can contribute to climate change. Now, another way it does is through bycatch of large animals, because these large animals actually move up and down in the water. And in that process, sequester carbon. They absorb the carbon. Some of them, they are discards, they are fuses, if you like, if I can say that, actually contain a lot of carbon. It sinks to the ground and is sequestered for a very long time. So if you get dolphins and whales as your bycatch, as you do your illegal fishing, that can also affect climate change. So these are just two channels, and I'm pretty sure there are more actually.
Thank you for that answer. Next one is someone, it's Janmay Mishra, who is joining from India. Thank you for the excellent presentation. It would be great if you could please reflect on IUU in the Indian context, and also refer some of the studies or papers that we can use.
Yeah. So India, when we did this study, Asia is generally, I think I'm able to talk more at this point in our data. You find India specifically more about Asia, right? And India is a big contributor to whatever I say about Asia, as is China, as you know, just by the sheer size and the energy of the country. So when we look at IUU fishing, Asia is bigger, right? There's more illegal catch out of Asia, but proportionately, it may not be the biggest because Asia is really big. Asia is about, I did a paper on this 2 years ago on Asian large marine ecosystems. You can Google that and find it. And in there, I remember, I think in the introduction, I said something like, if the world was carved into continents according to the catch of marine fish that you take, then there will only be 2 continents in the world, and Asia will be the larger one. You get my metaphor here, because I think about 55% of the total global catch of fish is all Asia. So naturally, the illegal fishing will also be proportionately bigger, even if it is the same proportionately around the world. And India, like I said, is huge in so many ways. And another thing about India is the coastal communities, there's really lots of people who depend on the fish. And that is truly challenging for policymakers. I have had interactions with Indian officials. In fact, there was a time a previous minister of fisheries asked me to send my student to his office to dig data on subsidies, and actually we did. Brajit was a student with us here, and She went and spent time and got us some data. So we've had that kind of relationship with Indian officials. What I know is that the massive number of people who depend on fish at the same time make the need to make Indian fisheries sustainable really, really huge. It's important. And then at the same time, because of the numbers, it also makes it difficult for officials to actually take action. And this is the challenge for the country. But fortunately, I think India is big enough, innovative enough to find a solution. There is a solution somewhere there.
Thank you again. Next question is from Hassan Habib. Hi, Prof. Thanks for nice presentation. How to control and or regulate IUU fishing in developing countries. It's kind of a big challenge for those countries. Thanks.
Yes, yes. I mean, this is really cool. And I've been thinking, I've been thinking a lot about that. And I have a kind of two-edge thinking about this. Number one, I think our countries should find a way to work together. I say this when I go to West Africa, the Gulf of Guinea. In there, you have about 16 countries that fish in that Gulf. And each of them behave virtually as if they are the only ones in the ecosystem. They are not. And the ecosystem is actually one, it's interlinked. So one of the things I've said in many places when I got the chances to say, how about these 16 countries come together to form a joint monitoring, control, and surveillance system for the ecosystem that they all benefit from, rather than Togo trying to chase people out of their waters, which they can't. It's just too small to do it alone. Gambia. But if all this come together and they chip in, that can produce enough reasonable amount of resources to actually monitor the whole thing for the benefit of all the nations. So collaboration is one of the suggestions I give. And in the Benguela system, you have Namibia, Angola, and South Africa. They have gone far in doing this, actually. You have the Benguela Current Commission, where the ministers meet, the scientists meet, they try to help each other to monitor. That's the kind of thing I think will help. The other way is if you are going to sign an agreement with, say, the EU, or if you're a Pacific Island state with Japan or the US, part of the negotiation should be to help put a monitoring system to make sure that the fisheries are sustainable. So both we and them can have this through time. And one advice I have for developing countries, don't fear to negotiate. Negotiate hard. I mean, with the big countries, negotiate hard. What will they do with you? You are fighting for your country and for your people, and everybody does that. Negotiate hard, get the best deal to support the sustainability of our fisheries.
Okay. Thank you, Rashid. The next question is from Aliou Shal from Senegal. I used to be optimistic, but I am wondering whether in our current context there is any hope to ban definitively IUU, given three facts I personally observe, and they include corruption is expanding, the political power, meaning those who rule us are controlled by finance, and most of fish workers all around the world are not either strong enough or engaged enough on the ground. What are your answers to this?
Yeah, very good question, Ali. Good to see you. I saw you in the picture there, and this is a tough one, you know. And my approach to these problems is that when you see these challenges, you say corruption is increasing, but corruption is not inevitable, right? And so the thing is, we don't give up. We keep pushing. We expand our possibilities, involve people as much as possible, make people realize how damaging this is. I know. I mean, I share some of your sentiments. Sometimes I wake up and say, "My God, this is not going to be possible." And then I remember the big man himself. I remember Nelson Mandela. He said, you push it so hard, you think it's impossible until it is done." So that is the way we have to approach this. And I see a lot of young Africans that really encourage me. Oh, it's amazing. I get this video of 23-year-old Nigerian woman from Kano, thinking of the culture. And she just gets up and starts a farm. She has a 7-acre farm producing stuff and feeding the Kano market. It's so big. She's done what is it? She's done a TED talk. Can you imagine? In Kano, thinking of the tradition and the religion and the position of women. And I see those kind of things. So don't let us give up. I know it's daunting, but hey, until it is done, and it will be done if we keep on. All right.
Okay. The next question is, I can't see the name, but I'll read out the question. I came across a study where the community wanted to deputize a member to have the ability or power to arrest people taking part in illegal fishing instead of going through the reporting process, since it takes a long time. Do you think this type of deputizing empowerment would be beneficial in SSF communities to help against IUU?
Yeah.
Definitely a
Yeah,
strong question.
this is a tough one,
Yeah.
Yeah, and usually when we are hard pressed with problems, we try to find solutions, and sometimes the solution we get actually in the short term looks good, but in the long run it turns out to be bad. And so a bit, I don't know, I'm skeptical about this, about doing things outside the formal system, because you never know, it can just get its own life. And my example, if you remember, about Somalia was actually something like that. The illegal fishing was so much, there's no government, and you can understand them. Some well-meaning citizens started a vigilante to control this, and then before you know, this was out of hand. So that's my little caveat and fear about those kind of outside. It might be better to really be a bit patient and pressurize the system to change, but I know that too can be hard, right? So we're always in this dilemma, of what is the best thing to do. But in general, I will just think, put pressure, and we have to really try to get the whole system to work well. And I see this. For example, I see one of the things we suffer in developing countries is that workers are really paid badly, all right? And usually what is the solution? Many of us just keep quiet and they say, okay, you are not paying me well. I either don't work as hard as I can, or I take some of the medicine and go and sell if I'm working in the hospital, right? And this leads to corruption and making the system bad. What I think we should do is to fight and argue with our employers. You have to give us a living wage. But if you cut away and find other channels that are themselves dubious, you just make the thing worse. So let's argue, let's fight it out, let's argue and get the right things on the ground. And I think that will be more difficult and take time, but ultimately, I think we'll be the better off for it.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. If I may ask one as the moderator, you mentioned in your talk about 70% of the IUU fishing taking place in developing world.
Yeah.
And, I wonder, how much of that is externally driven? Because, maybe, the actors or the people that engage in this IUU fishing in a particular territory are not someone who belongs to that territory. And we have heard stories about visiting fleets, fishing fleets, and, engaging in illegal and illicit activities in world's oceans. So two questions to that effect. One is, what is the level of recognition of that particular fact, and what is being done to address?
Yeah. No, this is I'm really grateful for this question, because I wasn't clear in my talk. Our estimate is mainly on large industrial fishing fleets, fishing and not reporting their catch. And we did both for domestic and international. But I can tell you, most of that is actually foreign fleets, all right? Because think about it, how many large industrial fishing boats do we have in Togo, almost nothing. So because we don't consider subsistence fishing as illegal in that sense, right? So most of this is actually foreign fishing boats from Europe, if you are in parts of Africa or China, or yeah. So they are mostly foreign, and that is a big issue. What are we doing is, it goes back to one of my questions, the countries banding together, teaming together to get resources as little as they have to build systems to help propel this action. I know it's not easy, but at least let's start. You never know where this will take you. So that is one way to deal with it. Another way is actually to hold these large countries responsible. Africa, the AU can raise this, in the UN, every fora you get a platform, raise this. And I do it as an individual. I remember the last time I gave a talk at the European Parliament. I said, come on, guys, you guys have to take responsibility for all that you've been doing over these years, centuries on the water in the fisheries of developing countries. You got to take the responsibility because you helped create the mess, So we need to do that at all levels. Anytime you have a platform, please raise it. And we got to shame those we don't have power to stop. We shame, name and shame, they say, right?
We have a question from Cecile Pradhan. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. The people's organizations like Fisher Federation and Collective Action is getting weakened day by day due to external market influences. How do you see such processes in relation to formal arrangements that is confronted with many issues like corruption, political patronage, and so on?
Yeah, it's so disturbing, actually, right? You see the organizations trying hard and to work for the community and ensure nature is sustainable, weakened because of the forces, the bigger forces that are running over us. And yeah, it's something that is so painful, actually, because you don't know how to really tackle that. And again, and I keep saying, we have to organize grassroots, but there's a lot of pushback, right? That's what this question is about. I don't know, and you see it all over the place. I mean, think about the US, the big USA, with 240 years of democracy, or at least that, in some form. I mean, they say they are the first real democracy in the world. And you see what the country has lived through in the last 4 years, and even today, and you wonder. This goes to Aliu's question, right? The other forces are just too much. And so organizing, doing the best we can to increase the possibilities for these associations and communities to keep alive. But I share your dilemma here.
Okay. I see a last question on the list here, which is from Vanessa Warren. It's clear that all three types of fish trade have negative effects on food security for the locals. What can governments do to ensure locals are not unfavorably affected? And the second part of that question is also, what can locals themselves do?
Yeah, locals themselves do. That is really a good one. Yeah. So what can locals themselves do? I give you an example here. It's from Vancouver here, but I think it's applicable. Well, there is an association here. They call themselves the Young Fishermen's Association of British Columbia, and I like them so much because they are so innovative in their thinking. These are young people who want to make fishing their career, and they're young people who know that without the fish, they cannot have that career. So they marry the need for having smart fishing, smart fishing with meeting the community needs and also ensuring sustainability. So those kind of actions on the ground are important. The community will have to decide what is important to them, what fish to sell and not to sell, and how to push back on the forces from the capital and regional governments and so on. So the local action can be done to make sure that the food that the community needs is obtained. And also, whenever you trade, whenever the fish goes away, to make sure that the benefits actually also comes to the community. Because my biggest problem is that these communities lose their fish and they don't see any money coming in. The money is whisked away, the fish is already taken, and you have food security problems. So how do we match these things? The local effort is important, but also national and global effort. And one of the ways is just to get allies in government and build them up, actually. And there are some good people in almost all the governments I've dealt with. There are leaders who really want to work for these communities, but the system is just crazy. So they also need space. Part of the work I do is actually giving leaders who want to do the right thing, as the science tells me, get the space to do that. So that's another thing. In Peru, a colleague of ours, the Peruvian anchovy is the largest fishery in the world in terms of weight. We catch a lot of anchovies, at some point up to 8 million tons a year. And most of this is grounded to feed the aquaculture industry. And meanwhile, there are so many people who are malnourished in communities, coastal communities in Peru. So Patricia is my colleague and friend, actually. She started a little movement. She was at the university at the time to make the fish, anchovies caught in their waters, as much of it sold locally, eaten locally, rather than taking away and grinding it for pigs and for other fish. And she managed to get the president of Peru at the time to actually eat anchovies on television, because they also say it's food for poor people. Meanwhile, it's very nutritious, this small fish. So you have that kind of action that tries to move a whole nation to actually consider the food security needs of the people. Yeah, it's a variety of things, and each one of us can contribute something at some level, I believe.
Thank you very much. Before I conclude, Dr. Sumaila, if I may just ask one very, maybe pertinent to the context that we are going through. So have you started observing or listing any specific impacts from the ongoing pandemic on IUU?
Oh, yeah.
So is it good or bad news, or what are we going to see in the future because of the pandemic?
In terms of the pandemic, the pandemic is, lots of studies, some have been done very quickly and more are coming. The pandemic is affecting fisheries in many ways. I mean, some of the legal fishers cannot go out fish because they follow the rules. There is a lockdown and they stay. My suspicion is that illegal fishers will probably increase their advantage because of the pandemic. Remember, these are people who don't care about rules, who want to take advantage. So maybe whilst those fishing legally are following the rules and staying at home, the illegal fishers are having a field day there. I don't have any data to back up this, but that is a kind of speculation in my mind, And it's been hard on fishing communities, obviously, because you can go out and get your fish, especially the subsistence people in parts of the world. But the thing about the pandemic also is that in Africa, many people are surprised that the impact is not as heavy as people would have expected, which is good news, isn't it? And I'm sure it's the same in parts of Asia, Latin America, except Brazil, and because they also have their own, they call him the Trump of the tropics. So you can see all the Trumpy people. People have really suffered in these countries, including India in the beginning, And then you have Russia and you have Brazil and the UK with Boris Johnson and so on. So leadership is critical, and maybe I should link this to our communities in the developing world, fishing communities. One key thing as I look around the world that we can do is really to promote are women, you know. I look around and I see the contributions of women where society has given women space to flourish. And it's just mind-boggling. It's unbelievable. I look at the US, women in general, what role they are playing to keep the country on a good path socially, economically, and environmentally. And especially to look at Black women contribution, whether mayors or now vice president. It's just amazing. So please, each one of us, let's promote half of our population, which is the women population. And I think that will help a lot.
Well, thank you very much. That was an hour and 15 minutes of, just a process of, listening to many insights and wonderful questions from our audience. But your reflections are really, they're, they provide us a direction into the future, but also gives us a really interesting understanding into many of the aspects that we are facing in our fisheries. Thank you very much once again, Professor Sumaila, for joining us and giving your valuable time. Speaking at this inaugural, thematic webinar series of V2B. Before we go, I want to acknowledge that V2B is supported by the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada, and we thank their support. But also thank you to our wonderful audience, great questions. And everyone that is part of this webinar today. And we look forward to hearing and seeing you in our next webinar on the last Friday of next month. And it will continue throughout the 2021. Thank you once again to everyone, and especially to
Wonderful. Thank you. Bye-bye. Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.